All right, welcome everybody to Mindset Monday. I just want to thank everyone for choosing to be on this call. I hope everyone had a great weekend, and it's really appreciated for you guys to be starting out your week with this call. If you don't know me, my name is Samantha Schwartz, and I am one of 4 amazing women who do this call. And like I said, we really appreciate you guys hopping on and hearing what we have to say. We're really passionate about mindset and the power that it has to really transform areas of your life, and especially areas in your business. And so everybody should give themselves a little round of applause for getting on this call. I know it was probably a long weekend for anyone who did some Super Bowl stuff, so this can be kind of an early morning. But I just want to share a little bit about who I am. If you've never been on a call with me, I'm actually a registered nurse. I've been a nurse for 6 years. I work labor and delivery, and I'm from St. Cloud, Minnesota, and so down in the cold where we just had the Super Bowl. So I also have been a networker for about 6 years, and that really I don't even know if that's a word, that really started my passion for mindset and really taking my own power back. You know, that's really what mindset's all about. It's taking your own power back. And so I got really into how I could decide for myself how life goes. And that really is part of what we're going to talk about today. So for those of you who know me, my intention is pretty similar on every call. My intention is to have each one of you have a breakthrough in one of the areas of your life out of what you learned today, out of applying it. So we're going to be on this call for the next 25 to 30 minutes. If you don't have something to write with, something to take notes with, please grab that now. I tend to talk kind of fast, and this is recorded, so that's helpful, but you just process things differently if you take notes. And so really get, a notebook, piece of paper, laptop, whatever your fancy is, and really start to peel back the layers as we talk through this next 25 to 30 minutes. So that's all about me, and we're going to get started. The topic today is transforming how you listen. So this is going to be huge because you're listening right now, and so you're going to start to notice some things about your listening as we talk about it on this call, because it takes something to get onto a call where there's not any visuals, there's not any interaction, and to just listen and to really take in what the person's saying and take away pieces of the message that pertain to you or don't pertain to you, and really take advantage of what's being said. Listening is a huge topic for me, because I know going through school, when you go to communication courses and things like that, a lot of it is how you speak. Effective communication has to do with how you speak, right? Well, what I'm going to talk about today is how listening can be just as powerful, if not more powerful, than how you talk. So you can listen in a way that's more powerful even than how you talk, which is incredibly crazy to me. But when you really look down at what communication is, we talk about verbals and nonverbals and all of those things that we learn in those communication courses, and already know that most of communication is nonverbal. And so how you listen to people makes a big difference in the message that they are getting across to you. So I just want everyone to think about different conversations that they've had, maybe just over this weekend, maybe this morning, whatever. But have you ever gone into a conversation and already knew how it was going to go? So like, say you're going to talk to, your mother-in-law, or you're going to talk to your sister, or you're going to talk to a friend of yours, or your spouse, or something, and you already know how this conversation is going to go. I'm sure that everybody can relate to that, and this is where the power is in listening. So consider that when you have conversations with people that you already have preconceived notions about who that person is. So, if you have a sister, that you have it that she is a great listener and all of these positive things about it, when you're speaking to her, you're going to listen to what she has to say in a different in a different mindset than if you're talking to a friend of yours that you may have it that they're a horrible listener and, they tell all the secrets and you can't really trust them, and, you have all of these preconceived notions about who that person is. So think about both sides of that coin and think about how different your conversations are with those two types of people. Okay? Now, this is really important because what this is doing is it's showing us that communication, if you're just innately communicating with somebody, we make it a lot about ourselves, about what we already know. We know that this person is like X, and so this conversation is going to go like X. And so our listening is diminished because we already know how it's going to go, so it's kind of a waste of our time to be really digging in and listening attentively to this person because we know how they're going to respond. We know how this conversation is going to go. It becomes really egotistical if you think about it. It's kind of like we know better than that person about what's going to happen. And really, this gets reinforced every single time we have conversations where we go into it already knowing what's going to happen. Because they say that when you have a conversation, people on average only take away 25% of what was said. Okay, and there's a couple of reasons behind that. And the first reason is because we look for things that reinforce our values and our beliefs. We literally look for this stuff, the words, the phrases, the tone that reinforces what we know about that person, and we filter out the things that don't fit with what we already know. Okay? And it's kind of a survival mechanism. It's like efficiency, right? Because we're efficient. We don't have time to not be efficient. We need to move, get through these conversations. So what happens is we get to have the same conversations over and over and over and over again, which is actually completely not efficient. So we really truly are wasting our time, but it's unintentional, and we think we're being intentional about not wasting our time, but we're actually making it so that we're wasting our time. Okay? So why I talk about that, so I said that was one of the first reasons why communication gets to be how it is. The other reason why is that we don't listen in a way that gives these people space. And what I mean by that is when you have a preconceived notion about how this conversation is going to go, there's no space for it to go anywhere else. Does that make sense? So that's why we continue to have the same conversations over and over and over again, is because we have it that it's like this. We do this with ourselves too. We have it that we are good listeners or we're not good listeners. We have it that we're good at, this activity or we're not good at this activity. We have it that we're shy or we have it that we're outgoing. We have these preconceived notions about who we are that, no matter if they're good or bad, often limit who we could be. There's no possibility present. There's no space to create something new if you have it that this is how it is and that this is truth. And I've talked about it a few times on other calls about how what's so, it ain't necessarily so. So you can basically think of any truth and question it and say, is that really true? Do I know 100% that is true? My husband leaves his socks everywhere. He should put them away. Do I know that it's 100% true that he should put those socks away? That in him putting those socks away, it's going to make him a better person. It's going to make me a better person. It's going to make the world a better place. You can question just about anything, and it's really not as true as we feel it is when we're in that reaction mode. And that's where communication gets to be really difficult, and it gets to be this recurring loop of what already is. There's no room for growth. There's no room for creation. There's no room for discovery when we act in a way, we speak in a way where it's just what it's always been. Okay, so that it brings up another good point about communication, and that's reactions. When people communicate, they often communicate they listen to people to reply instead of listening to understand. So I don't know about you, but I remember distinctly, especially when I was younger, I have a lot of like things I've worked through in my personality about wanting to be liked, about being smart, all this stuff. So I remember distinctly having conversations and waiting for my chance to get to say my point. Like I'm going to forget it or something if I don't keep thinking about, okay, I got to say this, I got to say this, I got to say this. Well, obviously, if you're waiting to reply, that causes people to interrupt a lot. I used to interrupt all the time. And it causes you to not listen at all because all you're thinking about is what you're going to say. And it comes a lot out of fears and insecurities because, like I said, in communication, when we're talking to somebody, we're looking for things that reinforce or challenge our current beliefs or values. Okay, so everything they say, we're looking for what supports what we believe or what challenges what we believe. We're not really looking to understand where they're coming from. We're looking to see what supports what we already know. So when we're doing that, the first point that comes up, we have in our head how we would respond to that. So then you get stuck on the reply instead of actually listening to understand where the person's coming from. And now this gets to be like a whole ball of concern in our head. We have this little voice in our head that tells us all of these things, like when I was little, and it would say, okay, if you don't say this, if you don't interrupt them and say this, you're not going to get a chance to say it. You know, I had this huge concern about not being heard, that people wouldn't get me. If I don't say this, then they're going to think that I'm this or I'm that. I need to be able to be heard so people get me, because I had it that people don't get me. And that's something I come up against a lot, is that people don't get me. I have to prove myself. You know, there's all of these underlying beliefs that have us listen the way that we listen. And there's a lot of similarities, and there's a lot of ways that people listen the same. And a lot of times we have it that we're different. And that we don't realize how much similarities we have with other people. You know, our basic fears and things about being heard, a lot of people have those same fears. That's why there's such an issue with communication and how we listen to people. And so the other thing that happens when you listen to reply is that that's where miscommunication comes in. Any communication, any conversations that you have that get negative emotions associated with it, anger, defensiveness, frustration, you know, when you're having a conversation, it's just not going the way you want it to go. Consider that it's in your listening that this is happening. Okay? And I know this is really hard for people sometimes because we have it that we're right about stuff. That, you know, they're being rude, they're speaking the way they're speaking to me because they're rude. And we have it that they're rude. And in our having it that they're rude, they're coming off as extremely rude. So we want to be right about it and put our guards up, look for the things that reinforce what we believe, what we don't, looking for the things that challenge what we believe to reinforce how rude they're being. And it just creates no power in the conversation. Okay, so now this rude person is going to leave rude, just as rude as they came. You're going to be right about it, and there's not going to be any forward movement. Okay, do you see how that can happen really easily? So consider that when you have a conversation that's not going the way you want it to go, that there's a place for you to be responsible for your listening. How cool is that? Like, letting go of being right about it, because it doesn't matter. They could be, yes, they can be extremely rude, that you can be totally right about it, or you can have some forward progression. You can make some progress with this. You can have some growth. You can relate to this person. And this is what I'm going to share with you guys next, is how to do that. Because it's one thing just to let go of your ego and not be right about something, but it's hard to do that when the other person is now just like feeling right about it. So this is my big concern. If I'm not right about it, that means they're right about it. So now they get to go ride their high horse off and, have this happy day, right? But that's, again, our head just messing with us. Because if you've ever walked away right about it and been the rude person, maybe someone says something, set you off, you were rude back at them, and then you were like, I showed them, walked away. How many times do you actually feel better leaving the situation? So consider that even if the person is being extremely rude, you're now right about how rude they are. They walked away, rude. Consider that they're not okay with it either. That they just really don't have the tools and the skills, or what's the word I'm thinking of, like their mentality, their mindset at that moment is just too much for them. Consider that they're going through something that you don't know about, and that's why they're being so rude, and it has nothing to do with you. Okay? There's a lot of grace that we can give people if we remember that we don't know them. Instead of, well, we already know how this person is, we know how it's going to go. There's coworkers of ours, probably, people that are acquaintances, people that you know but you don't really know, but all of your conversations with that person have gone a certain way, so you have it that they're like this. Well, most of acquaintances, you don't really know them, but we have it that we know them based on whatever conversations that we have in the small times that we have them. Because, for example, I work as a nurse, and so the conversations I have with some of my coworkers that I don't know on a personal level are all around patient care, all around physicians, are all around certain very small situational things. So how people respond in different situations is obviously going to be different than how they respond in other situations. If I'm always speaking with the same nurse during an emergent situation and I have it that they're extremely rude, consider that this is a really high-stress situation, and whatever they have going on in their personal life or whatever skills that they have or have not acquired has them reacting in this way. And it's nothing to do with me. It's all to do with that the only conversations I've had with them has been in an emergent situation where we're both concerned about the patient's well-being. Okay? So see how different that can be. Like, would you rather have a nurse that responds to advocate for the patient and do everything that they can do to improve the patient's well-being, or someone that is reacting to the communication of a coworker that isn't maybe dealing with the situation as good as that nurse thinks they should be dealing with it? Okay? So that's why the listening part can give people so much power, because you literally have the power to change how conversations go, just in how you're being with people, just in giving them grace that whatever they're going through is causing them to communicate in the way that they're communicating, and it has nothing to do with you. So you can stand from that place, and you can, call it being a clearing for communication. Okay? And I forgot to say this at the beginning of the call, but what we talk about on these calls, me and the 3 other awesome women that do these calls, it's a culmination of things that we've learned. So it's from like all different sources. You might hear some things that you've heard in other ways, shapes, or forms. We read a lot of books. We do a lot of courses. So it's a culmination. It's our interpretation of what we've learned about this topic. Okay? So we're not claiming to have original thought on all of what we're saying. Like, this isn't like our, research or anything. But getting back to that, there's a thing called already always listening. How you listen to people is from those preconceived notions, right? So what if we can break that cycle? What if we can get our power in creating a space, a clearing for communication to happen, not how it always has, based on what supports or doesn't support our values and beliefs, but it can be new. There can be possibility in it. There can be an impact. Because I know each one of you on this call, you wouldn't be on this call if you weren't someone who likes to make an impact. Okay? When you're interested in mindset, when you're interested in developing yourself, in growing, you want to make an impact. There's no way to make an impact if you don't work on your listening. Because it'll just keep, it's just like they say, you know, with the thoughts in our head that we think, what do they say? We think like 80% of the same thoughts every single day. Like, how disgusting is that? Talk about a lack of efficiency there, right? So this is the same kind of thing, is if your conversations often don't go the way that you think they should go, or they're very superficial, consider that it's in your listening. Consider that you have the power to change it. Okay? So that's what we're going to talk about, is how we get there. Okay? Just going to make sure I didn't miss anything, because I've kind of just been walking around. Yes. So how do we get away from being just reactions, listening to people to reply, you know, having this egotistical thing about knowing people, you know, or just looking for the pieces. They also call it confirmation bias. If you've ever heard of confirmation bias, because when you're talking to someone that you've never met before, it's kind of hard to have a preconceived notion about what they are, but you would be surprised at how quickly you can make a judgment and opinion about someone. Like, even if we're not intentional, even if we're like, oh, we're not judgmental people, all this stuff. Awareness, guys. Awareness is the key to everything for change. For transforming, for breakthroughs, awareness is the first step. Become aware of how quickly you can start to put the pieces of the puzzle together, because it's not a bad thing. It's, again, out of survival. It's a human nature thing to put pieces of the puzzle together, to make sense of what we're hearing based on what we already know. You just have to be aware of when what you're doing is affecting the conversation, and hone in on your power to have the conversation be like insanely better than it would have been if you just would have been putting all of these puzzle pieces together, putting what they said into this box and that box and this box, and then having them pegged by the end of the conversation of who they are. Okay, so how do we do this? Firstly, you want to start to listen to them as bigger than what they are or could be at that given moment. So what I mean by that is, if you have someone in your life that you have it, that they are not a good listener, that they are really selfish, that they are never there for you, blah, 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 blah. When you go into the conversation, consider letting that go. Consider actively letting that go, like identifying what your preconceived notions are about that person, what your opinions and beliefs are about who that person is. Let them go. And to take it a step further, you can even start to think of that person in a sense of opposite of what you had them at. So you think they're not a good listener, you know, you're calling your mother-in-law and it's like, she's a horrible listener, she, you know, doesn't really care, she's too busy for me, you know, blah, blah, whatever. So go into a conversation and be like, oh, my mother-in-law, she's an amazing listener, she loves me so much, she has all the time in the world for me, she answered my call because she has time for me. And start to think about that person in a sense that's opposite of what you have it that they are, and try to maintain that focus through the conversation. It's very difficult in the beginning because we have a lot of history with some people. right? We have a lot of history of reinforcing those beliefs. And again, messages that you get from people, you only retain typically 25%. So consider that. Do you think it would be pretty easy to take 25% of a conversation and reinforce only what you want to reinforce about that person? Can you see how possibly in that 75% of your entire history that they may have shown a different side of them and you dismissed it because it didn't fit in your box? This is that giving people grace thing. Consider that they are bigger than you're seeing them right now. Another way to look at this is think of someone you know who you have a lot of respect, admiration for. When you go into a conversation with them, how is your listening of them? Even if they say something that's like a little off the wall and you're like, oh, that's not like Sam though. One of my favorite quotes is, and I probably can't say the exact quote right now, but it's something to the effect of, be someone who if anyone heard anything bad about you, that they would question it, so they wouldn't believe it. Okay? There's people that you have like that, and then there's people that you have that are not like that. So consider you have the power to listen to them bigger than they are, and that you can see things about them that you wouldn't have been able to see otherwise. Now, one way to help with that, or two ways, I guess, is start to listen to people from their commitments and listen to them from their concerns. This is really important when you're getting to people who you have it that they're rude, that they're angry, whatever, when you get into hostile conversations. Try your hardest to listen for their commitment, listen for their concern. Okay, so you're looking more at the words they're saying versus the tone and the body language and all of the stuff that's just screaming at you and it's putting your guards up. Listen to the words they're saying and consider that they're reacting because they're really committed to something or they're really concerned about something. Okay? Again, they just might not have the skills to deal with that commitment or concern or communicate that commitment and concern in a way that's effective to you. Because again, this could be very effective for them. They could act like this because it's been effective for them. And you might be one of those people who this is like a total turnoff and you're like shut down and it doesn't work, but it might have worked for them in the past to communicate like this, which is why they continue to do so. And it might have worked one time and now they communicated for the last 5 years like this and like everybody is like not on board with how they're communicating, but it worked that one time. And so again, out of survival, this person has created a habit of responding like that. But again, consider you have the power to listen through that and to hear the message, to hear what they're really trying to say, what they're really committed to, what they're really concerned about. This happens a lot with families, me being a nurse, is, I've had, for example, a patient getting an epidural. It's taking longer than it typically takes. The patient might have some funny anatomy with the curvature of their spine or, whatever the case may be. They might be moving a lot, whatever, but the anesthesiologist is having a hard time getting the epidural. And I've had dads all of a sudden freak out, like yelling, what's taking so long, all this stuff. And initially you could be like, oh my gosh, chill out, like, they're doing the best they can, giving all these reasons and stuff. Or you can see that this dad is obviously very concerned about his significant other. He's very concerned about the mom. She's in pain. Why isn't this working? And they feel helpless. They feel out of control. They can't do anything to help it. They don't know why this is taking so long. And so if I can listen to their commitment is for their wife or girlfriend or significant other to be in less pain. That's what they're committed to. They're committed to helping the situation, diffusing the situation. It's just that they don't know how else to communicate that except for freaking out. Okay? So I can be a lot more effective in speaking and talking that dad down if I am talking to them based on their commitment. If I'm acknowledging that I get You want her to be comfortable. And we want her to be comfortable too. And I can talk him through it instead of basically saying, you're bad, you're being whatever he's being, you're being inappropriate. I need you to step out of the room, because that would be an alternative way to respond to that. But see how there's power in listening to people for their commitments and their concerns. Okay? So it's 9:30. I apologize if it seems like I'm kind of cutting this short, but as you can see, there's a lot of development you can do on your own with this topic. And I really, really encourage people, on a Facebook group, we have a post about this that we'll post the recording on to this feed. Comment on there. Comment what you've gotten out of this call, what you're discovering, what are your ahas, what are your little takeaways from this call, and really start to engage. Don't let this topic just, fizzle out and, it was like, oh, this is cool in the moment, whatever. Because, again, I'm committed to you guys having breakthroughs, and in order to have breakthroughs, you have to apply what you learn. Okay? It's not something that just happens just from learning it. It has to be in the doing and in the action. So really start to look at your conversations this week and apply listening for commitments and concerns and having the power to be a space for and a clearing for communication instead of having preconceived notions about how this conversation is going to go. Okay? So I'm over time. I could probably continue talking about this, but thank you guys all for being on the call. Again, my name is Samantha Schwartz, and I hope to see you guys next Monday. We're every Monday at 9 a.m. Central Time. Thanks again for being on the call.